Hello to all you patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 285 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one live book review podcast in Canada. Today's February 22nd, 2021. My name is Andrew. Joining me for book club tonight, we have Ian, Gavin, Benny, younger Andrew, despite what his screen name may say, and Dave.
Gonna introduce yourself?
I thought I went first.
Good.
My name is also Andrew.
Oh, well, there you go. That's what I get for not paying attention. We'd love to hear your feedback about the show. So please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Please feel free to give us some suggestions for book club. A version of the show is available on Stitcher and iTunes.
And judging by our intro, we do need your help to support the Canadian Patriot Podcast. Visit patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon. You can get a better quality version of the show for just $1 per episode. Show you're not a communist, buy a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com homepage and follow the link on the right.
That brings us to my favorite segment. That's called What Are We Drinking? It's where I ask my co-conspirators what we're drinking. We'll go clockwise on the screen the way that I see people. We'll start with the other ender on today's broadcast.
I've got my own homebrewed cider. It's about 7.5%, just with store-bought apple juice and yeast and a crap ton of sugar.
So delicious.
I like it. Dave, what are you drinking?
Just drinking some Coors Light tonight. Keeping the calories down.
Disappointing. Benny, what are you drinking?
Water. So I'm imaginative that way.
Like actual water, not just light beer?
Yep.
All right, then. Gavin?
I, too, am also drinking water. Fresh out of the Berkey, no garbage in it water, but water nonetheless.
I suppose as long as it's been defluoridated and they don't have any atrazine in it.
Yeah, no, it's good to go. I got to finish my last bit of my 2 liters for the day.
Good stuff. Ian, what are you drinking?
I am drinking the Pride of Bitburg, Germany, which is Bitburger Pilsner, and with a well-water chaser.
They're very original with the names of their beers over there.
Well, it just keeps things simple, right?
Like that. That works. I am also keeping things simple with more festive holiday beer that I found.
And ever will you run out?
Ale. Well, this is what happens when they have an end of season sale, and I'm like, yes, I will in fact buy everything in your brewery.
I'll take it all. Yes. Which one would you like, sir? Yes.
That was kind of the thing, was like, how much can we put in an F-150? Oh, almost all of it. Okay.
Outback.
You gotta help support your local economy. Go to your local microbrewery and see if you can put a barrel of beer in your truck.
Actually, I think they did just start one in Milton. Apparently, it's pretty decent. It's like a wheat beer, so I'll have to check it out. They've been closed, though.
Hopefully, once the Rona subsides. Remind everybody about the Patriot Challenge. A bunch of people on the panel tonight are drinking their water. Has everybody done their 45 minutes of exercise?
Absolutely.
If you count work in a warehouse.
Yeah. If you count hopping up into trucks all day, yeah.
No, I don't.
No,
Dedicated exercise effort.
Yeah, I was up at 7 o'clock this morning to get my exercise in.
It's how I start my day.
Taking my break after leading people through the snow in the park yesterday for several kilometers.
I didn't get nearly enough steps yesterday when we went on our little adventure, but that's okay.
I was at about 8,000 by the end of that, or by the end of the course. Not the end of the day, but by the end of the course, I had over 8,000. I had about 3 kilometers racked up. I mean, I walked back and forth several times following different groups across the bridge and back and forth and whatnot.
I mean, it's good, and you should do that. I get that, but I also wandered all over everywhere and still only got a 10,000 step day.
You should have put a ruck on that whole time and got a little bit extra exercise during it.
Yeah, well. Put on the ruck could have helped. But I mean, that snow was deep. I mean, everywhere in that park off the path was a good foot. It was a foot everywhere, buddy.
It was fine. So drink your water, read your books, practice your skills, get your exercise, complete a
Yeah.
task to improve your life.
Yeah.
If you're not
Like
banned from
tuning in
social
for
media,
book club. That's a task that improves your life.
It's true.
book club makes you better.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power. We do go on to book club. I have my very well read. Oh, keys out when you hold it up to the screen. That's fun. My very well read copy of Ender's Game that I think cost me a whole like $9.99 when I bought. Oh no, $6.99 when I bought this at copy.
Yeah, but
Steal.
with inflation now, that's probably what, like $15?
I couldn't tell you what it would be now. I've had a copy of Ender's Game for at least 15 years.
Yeah, the only thing I could say about Ender's Game is that like when I did read it, and I read it a long time ago as well, I only wish I read it sooner. It's enjoyed it thoroughly. Especially I like science fiction as well, so it's like right up my alley.
I get that. I'm also a sci-fi fan, and I like Orson Scott Card. He's a pretty good author. And I mean, this is a well-recognized science fiction book, although I don't think it's necessarily recognized for its science fiction.
Mm.
Hugo and Nebula Awards the year it came out in the year following. I have not read the sequels, and I refuse to see the movie because I don't want them to spoil my adolescent years.
Yeah,
Don't-
the movie is not
don't.
needed at all. Yeah, it
Do
doesn't
not.
do any favors to anything.
If you don't know anything about the book, watch the movie, and then read the book and get a much, much, much better experience.
Yeah.
If you've read the book, do not watch the movie because you just get disappointed. The whole thing was rushed, and as you guys were saying yesterday, like 30% of the book is in the movie.
Well, yeah, like if you're a fan of reading the Coles notes, but you don't want to read the Coles notes, watch the movie.
Yeah, but you're not getting the whole picture, not even close to half the picture.
For
really.
those of you that got a public school education,
But as you said, I will say that the spin-offs and sequels were also very well enjoyed and well written, I would say as well.
At the very least, you should read Ender's Shadow. It's taken during the same timeline from another character's perspective that we'll probably get into later. And it totally changes the way you view that character in a good way and sort of explains sort of what are the things that they did. And it's definitely good.
I've never read the sequels. I've read some of Card's other books, standalone books, because I think he has a couple series and a couple standalone books. 2, 3 series, maybe. I don't know. I like
what
the way
are
he
the other
writes.
ones? Are they also science fiction or?
Yes, he writes in science fiction, Alvin Maker series and the Homecoming series. And I think they're both like 5 or 6 books series. And I think there's a couple of standalone novels.
Lots to read.
Yeah, lots to read. And I mean, a well-respected science fiction author and not a particularly old book. Originally published in 1985 based on a series of short stories from the middle 70s. So it's not ancient sci-fi. It's kind of neat.
It's aged fairly well as well. There's nothing that seems like grossly outdated as far as his.
No, I mean, even how they talk about like faster than light travel and whatnot, it actually quite makes sense with like, the time paradox and stuff. Like it sounds like he did his homework when he wrote the book and how everything kind of works out.
Or at least coast light travel anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and they didn't get like super in depth into any technology what doesn't actually exist. So like it's just like, yeah, we went to the space station and like they never really get down into the nitty gritty like like Star Trek or something like that, right?
Yeah, with the warp drives and stuff.
Yeah, that maybe in time when new science comes out, you can be like, that's not true at all, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they do have like Ender and some of his friends do theorize that there is technology that is being deployed that they're not told about. If I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So do we
and
want to
Yeah.
spoil the end of
they
the
end
book
up
and all that
using
stuff?
that. I'm
I'm
going
talking.
to.
I'm talking about like when they're still in school. I'm pretty sure they discuss other stuff. But if you want to start off at
Yes.
the beginning of the story versus the middle,
We could do that, and there will be spoilers, as there always is when we do book club. And
Yeah.
I'm going to skip around in the book a bunch because that's how we do this.
Yeah.
So you go, you buy a copy of the book, you read it yourself.
Yeah,
I
so it's
read
not a
some of this to
spoiler
you
because
badly.
you've already read it. If you haven't, tough titties.
Yeah, generally for a book club, you've read the book.
No,
At least
I
once.
imagine that there are going to be listeners that don't read the book and they just listen to us ramble for an hour, the same as we do every week while we drink and talk to our friends. And decide
They're
to
just
save the
waiting
free
for us
world.
to talk politics. Yeah.
Start at the very beginning. I've watched through his eyes, I've listened through his ears, and I'll tell you he's the one, or at least as close as we're going to get. That's what you said about the brother. The brother tested out impossible for other reasons, nothing to do with his ability. Same with the sister, and there are doubts about him. He's too malleable, too willing to submerge himself in someone else's will. Not if the other person is his enemy. So what do we do? Surround him with enemies all the time? If we have to. I thought you said you liked this kid. If the buggers get him, they'll make me look like his favorite uncle. All right, we're saving the world after all. Take him. They're off to a start. So we're in a timeline somewhere in the future. Card's not specific about how far in the future this happens. The only real clue comes towards the end of the book. We know that a house that Ender visits on Earth was made at least 100 years ago at a time when computers weren't networked. And the computers in that house are so old that they only run the lights in the security system.
So like
that's really the only clue we
2001.
have for. Yeah, I think safe to assume that it's around 100 years from when it's written as a reasonable figure, but it really doesn't. It could be any point in the computer, or any point in the future. The only clue is the reference to networked computers. Remembering the mid 80s, like we're just beginning to get the beginnings of the internet at that point.
Yeah.
They were working on inventing it. It was about to be invented.
Or at least wasn't public yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Computers are a thing, but they're not a common enough thing, and not everybody has internet in their home, and interconnected networks aren't really big technology yet. So it's safe to assume that it's at least 100 years from when it was written.
The whole sentence definitely makes more sense, especially once you've been introduced to the characters, and you're probably about 3/4 of the way through the book, and then it kind of all makes sense. Everything that they're referring to.
It starts to make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also a time at some point in the future where we have experienced massive political shifts, and the world is divided into several large political bodies. The Americans, the Russian hegemony, and maybe a third player, the Warsaw Pact countries, which is somehow different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something like Oceania, East Asia, and
Yeah.
same idea.
Same idea, yeah.
Yeah, I was having a little bit of, and I've always had a hard time following that in the book, the difference between the hegemony and the Warsaw Pact countries. Because like it says the Warsaw Pact countries control the Middle East and the Muslim states, but it seems like the Russian Empire or the Russian imperial powers also controls parts of Asia. It's not super clear to me how the world gets laid out, but it seems like it's America and then everybody else.
Yeah. Well, back in the 70s and early 80s, I mean, the Russian, well, even now today, but they certainly weren't the best of friends with Russia and China, right? So I imagine he could probably foresee Russia taking over China at the time. It'd probably be the opposite now.
All the way around now, yeah.
In the spin-offs, it does go into detail about that. All the children later on start becoming leaders in the different wars and stuff going on, and they break down all the different countries and where they're aligned with and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, I think that's part of the other thing to remember with this is written from the perspective. Perspective is maybe not the right word. the main
Bias.
character is, well, he's like 6 years old at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
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 And by the end of the book, he's
12,
11?
I think. Yeah, 11
Almost
or 12.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's also, I think, that frame of reference thing. Some things are intentionally left vague because children aren't included in necessarily what's going on, even if they are literally the smartest people in the room, the smartest people not on the planet.
Yeah.
They do end up going to space school in space.
I went to space
Interplanetary
school.
travel is a thing.
Yeah.
The other piece to keep in mind with this is the way that the world is organized at this part in the book's timeline is that there's some sort of upper limit that governments have placed on the number of children that a family can have. And there are political dissidents that don't abide by the 2-child policy, and they are taxed extra, or they don't receive government schooling, or there's other penalties for having more than the allotted 2 children. So there is some resource scarcity going on. The international fleet, the military force that is made up by these world superpowers or alliances of superpowers, is mining asteroid belts to make enough steel to build starships with.
Well, statistically, even nowadays, they figure that the replacement rate for the human race is 2.1 kids per family. So I guess if they're trying to reduce slowly, they could go with the 2-child policy. But same thing. Actually, my daughter has a friend from China, and he was part of that whole 1-child policy generation. But he was a second, just like a third in the book, and he was actually treated fairly poorly growing up, being a second child in a 1-child policy state. It was actually quite amazing, and even today, he's still treated differently. So it was kind of something that rang true with me there, because I've heard the stories about the 2-child policy thing, or the 1-child policy in China.
Yeah, so the entire book, he gets chastised for being a third. That's what they call that's the moniker for it, and just sort of.
Although he was an authorized third, but is still treated poorly because he is a third.
Well, there's the social stigma around the being the third,
Yeah.
even though the government or the military, which highly interdependent in this book, the government and military seem to just be the same agency for the most part. Like it's at such a level where the international fleet, the coalition military, just sort of seems to run everything. But again, that could be the point of view of the main character in the story, because he works with the international fleet, and that's what he's being trained to do from an incredibly young age. That's literally why he was born, was to effectively grow up to become a military officer.
Well, he's also, I do believe, property of the military. By his parents signing off on getting pregnant with the third, they kind of had full rights to him, did they not?
Yeah, they said if he works out for the program, it's his, and they can't veto or not decide to not send him up into training. But if he failed out from the program or whatever, then yeah, they would be able to keep him. And
Well, it's interesting that there's the implication there's some sort of genetic testing or genetic manipulation with that, because they did have the 2 first siblings, the older brother Peter, and then the older sister, the middle child, Valentine, who was
both gifted.
They're all very gifted. They're all highly intelligent children, and they seemingly come from a highly intelligent family. Although they are some sort of religious political distance, at least to a certain degree. The brother is too mean and short-sighted and effectively a bully.
Or a sociopath or something.
Yeah. Well, it's implied it's a sociopath, but again, like a large part of the story is also told from the perspective of a 6-year-old with an older brother. So if you had an older brother, didn't he torment you? Like,
yes, but in the sections
when he's daydreaming about killing you and then telling you about it, that's a different thing.
Yeah, and in the sections of the book where it does go from the sister's perspective, she does go into detail on some of the horrific shit he's done. as in like abusing animals and torturing them and cutting them open, and all the hallmarks of
Good
serial killer /
Yeah.
sociopath, like all. So
Well, and the sister is supposed to have been the gentler, kinder. They were supposed to have fixed that mistake, and
They went too far.
well, that's the implication, is that she's too empathetic with her.
She lost the killer instinct.
Yeah, she's not hard enough to do the killing that needs to be done. She's not going to be able to destroy humanity's enemies.
He's the eye of the tiger.
Crush their foes.
so they're hoping that by having a third, he'd be a mix of the two.
Strike that balance.
Yeah.
He's that just right.
Yeah, the porridge that's just right.
Just
The
right.
first one was too sociopathic. The second one wasn't homicidal enough, but the third one was just right.
If we manipulate him for 6 years.
And don't tell him he's killing people.
Yeah. it's a game.
Yeah, and ostracize him completely.
Calculated decisions by the alleged teachers at the battle school. I'm gonna jump way forward into battle school when he's in his second army. The whole concept of battle school, the children there are meant to grow up to be pilots and
Tacticians
commanders and admiralty of the international fleet. So they're learning tactics and strategy and astrophysics and how to lead troops and complete military missions. And the training is all predicated, all of the classroom and the schoolwork and the games are all predicated on the only game that matters, the battle room. Zero gravity, space combat, laser gun tag,
Dodgeball on steroids.
Yeah, the world's coolest
much.
game of dodgeball is really
Yeah.
It's like, laser tag, dodgeball put together with 0G and some obstacles, and have at her.
So Trudeau would definitely ban it.
Yeah.
So the idea being to train them to fight and think and be able to operate in zero gravity, but also to be able to strategize and work as a team and lead troops and understand how to navigate and put their forces into positions where they can be effective. And that's well, they don't do so well in the first army, but the second army, when he meets Dink Meeker,
Like their platoon, you mean?
do a little bit better.
The platoon leader.
What was the first one called again?
Rat army that he was in first.
Army was Rat with Bonzo Madrid, and the second army was something with
Salamander.
Rose the
The
Nose was the
Salamanders,
guy. Yeah.
The Salamanders. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump forward to that part in the book where he's been traded into his second army, and the armies are not huge. There's
Sounds like a platoon size for the most part.
I think it's about 40 people or so is their army size.
41 including the commander.
No double hatting, huh? There's another international fleet that would frown upon that. That's a different set of novels, though. You refer back to when we did Starship Troopers for that one.
They learned from their mistakes.
So we'll go to the part where he meets Dink in the games room after being assigned to Dink's platoon in Salamander Army. I'm Ender Wingen. I know. I'm in your tune. I know. I'm pretty inexperienced. Dink looked up at him. Look, Wigan, I know all this. Why do you think I asked Rose to get you for me? He had not been dumped. He had been picked up. He had been asked for. Meeker wanted him. Why? Asked Ender. I've watched your practice sessions with the launchies. I think you show some promise. Bonzo is so stupid I wanted to give you better training than Petra could get you. All she can do is shoot. I needed to learn that too. You still move like you're afraid to wet your pants. So teach me. So learn. I'm not going to quit my free time practice sessions. I don't want you to quit those. Rose the Nose does. Rose the Nose can't stop you. Likewise, he can't stop you from using your desk. So why did he order it? Listen, Ender, commanders have just as much authority as you let them have. The more you obey, the more power they have over you. What's to stop them from hurting me? Ender remembered Bonzo's blow. I thought that was why you were taking personal attack classes. You've really been watching me, haven't you? Dink didn't answer. My notes there when I was reading through for the podcast. I think the important thing to take from that was that all the way through to this point in Ender's life, he's basically been doing what other people have told him to do because they've been telling him to do it because he's a child and that's how it works and you do as you're told. And he's finally got somebody that's telling him, you only have to do what you want to do. Other people only have as much power over as you let them have.
You're not the boss of me. You're not my real mom.
I do what I want.
Well, but up until that point, somebody's always been telling him what to do. As a child, his parents and his teachers on Earth, at battle school, as a launchy, what's the adult was in charge of them? DAP was telling the launchies what to do. In the first army, his commander was bullying him and pushing him around and then physically abusing him.
And forcing him to do nothing during the battles. Just sit there, don't unholster your weapon, and do nothing because you're worthless to me. So you're going to be worthless.
Hike your own hike. It's time to get going.
Well, I think that's an important lesson to take from that, though, is other people have the power that you let them have over you. And a lot of people think they have power over others, but it's really only as far as that person is willing to be pushed. Which, I mean, we saw that with Bonzo later. They have their fight in the shower room, and Bonzo
doesn't work out so
suffers for it. But
the good news is he gets reassigned to Madrid. What's the big deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, permanently reassigned.
I don't think I'd want to be reassigned to Madrid. Even if I was dead.
But I like the book for that. And I think that type of small tidbit is, I think, why the book makes the Marine Corps professional reading list. Is it's all of the small leadership lessons. It's all of the small personal lessons.
As well as in the beginning when he... when they're children, the IF installs a monitor, aptly called, in the back of their neck that tracks everything they're doing. It reads their views from their perspective. It doesn't quite read their thoughts, but it's like in their mind. And all the children are watched to see if they have the potential to become a leader one day. And once... because Ender was getting picked on for being a third the entire time, everything was resting on whether or not he accepted the program. And so then they removed the monitor from him as the last sort of test, you find out later. And so everyone thinks, oh, you flunked the program. So all the bullies immediately start bullying him because now he's not being watched by the government constantly. And he ends up killing the bullies, you find out later, way later in the book. And the reasons why Ender did that is that he wanted to stop the threat permanently. Because if he didn't, if he only did a half measure, he would just come back later and continue to torment.
He sort of described it as he wanted to win this fight and every other fight after it.
Exactly.
And deter the cohorts.
Be the fight to end all fights.
Yeah. So yeah, he really doesn't like violence. He really doesn't want to do it, but he will do it if it's to defend his life and will end this, suffering for him for, now until the end of time if he doesn't do something about it now.
That was one of the criticisms that I had read about in some of the critical works, talking about Ender's Game, was that there were constant excuses for why a child was able to be violent in the novel, and why Card made the protagonist so that he was killing other children. And I think there's, at least in the critical circles, I think there's a misunderstanding of that, because there's a difference between like indiscriminate killing, like murder.
Yeah, like and like the brother and torturing animal, like that's not the same thing as Ender. Like one is intentional and malicious and psychotic.
But it's not even like it's a retaliation. There's
self-defense.
There's a specific goal in mind, and it's not like you said. You're right. It's not malicious. It's to end the threat.
Self-defense. It's self-preservation. At the end of the day, and nobody's going to do it for you.
I think that goes again to some of the leadership lessons to draw from the book, is that it's not necessarily about killing your enemies. It's about destroying your enemy so thoroughly that they can never threaten you.
And also not to rely on anyone, because that was the one thing that he was constantly tested on in the book, was that you're going to get thrown into a problem and no one's going to be there to help you out. You have to figure it out on your own and get out on your own. And that's the thing. He kept waiting for the teachers to come in. Like, they should be here any minute now. Like, why aren't they here? Why aren't they stopping this? Why aren't they breaking it up?
My friends aren't here.
The teachers won't let me get a beating in the locker room. The teachers won't leave this strange old man to sit on my floor of my bedroom and meditate at me until he kicks my ass. But again, that's another lesson from Dink, and I'll jump forward again another chapter or two. Dink was talking about having turned down a pair of promotions to become an army commander, and instead he's still just a platoon commander, or I guess they abbreviate it Toon Commander, which sounds silly, but here we are. The second time they took away my old locker and bunk and desk and assigned me to a commander's cabin and gave me an army, but I just stayed in the cabin until they gave in and put me back into somebody else's army. Why? Because I won't let them do it to me. I can't believe you haven't seen through all this crap yet, Ender. But I guess you're young. These other armies, they aren't the enemy. It's the teachers. They're the enemy. They get us to fight each other, to hate each other. The game is everything. Win, win, win. It amounts to nothing. We kill ourselves, go crazy trying to beat each other. And all the time, the old bastards are watching us, studying us, discovering our weak points, deciding if we're good enough or not. Well, good enough for what? I was 6 years old when they brought me here. What the hell did I know? They decided I was right for the program, but nobody ever asked me if the program was right for me.
Sounds a lot like our teachers these days.
Well, I think teachers, and again, like this ends up on the Marine Corps reading list, and there's some, again, critical responses to the novel about indoctrination in the military and the parallels this draws.
Yeah.
Going through boot camp, you do get pitted against other recruits or other platoons or other teams, but really the enemies are the instructors. But the instructors, the senior NCOs that are responsible for military training, are not really the enemy. They're preparing you for whoever the government declares is the actual enemy someday.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're not your friend per se. At least it doesn't feel like they are.
Well, they're not. I don't think they are your friend, and I think that's meant to be on purpose to build that esprit de corps with the in the case
shared
of
suffering and all of that. Yeah.
So it's your toon mates and your army mates that are the people that you should be relying on for your team's ability to win. Your individual ability to win is based on the people that are around you, not necessarily the people that are responsible for the training, but the people that you have to complete the tasks with.
And to further emphasize that, in the mess hall, all the armies, they all eat separately. Well, they're all in a room together, but they're all like, all the armies are at their own separate tables. They have their own bunk room where the entire army, minus the commander, is in the room. In the mess hall, they have scoreboards up on the walls showing the stats of every single army and every single soldier, and what they've been doing, their accomplishments, and how much better they are, different rankings and stuff. So the whole thing is they've been pitting against each other. And
the rankings, at least for the armies, goes back almost indefinitely to show like the lineage and all of that, which a lot of militaries, that's very important because they've got that system that they have all their battle flags and colors and songs, and this regiment turned into that one and amalgamated with this one and all of that.
So you basically just described a prison cafeteria with a scoreboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, with very tiny prisoners.
Yeah, but they all huddle in their groups, right? And they all they don't intermingle, and there's some intended shivings and everything else. It's all very similar.
It's actually frowned upon to be eating with another army. So
yeah, which is the kind of the funny thing about the whole thing. Like I get it, but then also it's like once they graduate from school, they're supposed to go and join the army, like the real army, together.
Be all on the same team. Allegedly.
And I think they kind of make that point somewhere towards the end of the book, and it's like, we're all fighting against each other here, but then when we get out of here, we're all going to have to work together to fight against the buggers and all that. So
onward, more leadership lessons that I drew from the novel. Ender very, very prematurely is promoted to a command position and given his own army, and they reactivate an army that did not previously sit in the standings. So
it's the best name.
It was deactivated because there was belief that there was a bad luck curse for the army.
That's what
that's what he's told.
The officer that controls the battle room game tells Ender. I don't know how much stock to actually put in that. If we take the novel for what it is, I don't know if they would actually deactivate an army and take it off the standing. Because remember, they never go back and follow this up in the book. In the main mess hall where all the armies eat, they have the individual soldier standings and they have the army standings for the last 3 years. In the commander's mess hall, they have the all-time army standings, but the standings that are displayed are only for the term that commander has been in command of the army. So you can go back and look at the history of every army at the battle school, but the only score that counts is the score that the current commander has. And they never actually touch on if Dragon was a deactivated army that they brought back or not, or what that happened to. Because it would be, if they have Infinity records, it would be easy enough to go back and look and find that out. So I don't know that I believe Major Anderson particularly, because he's kind of an asshole character, and I think that's the point of that character, is he is a jackass.
Well, that, and I mean the way that they mess with the kid from day one, and like he has no idea that those kids that he fought defending himself, he's murdered.
Well, this is actually Commander Graf that did it. So
yeah, but I mean they've shown that they have no problem messing with the kid and lying to the kid to get.
Was it Graf that told him that he was the commander? I thought it.
It was Graf. Yeah.
But I mean, he's got the coolest name out of all the other armies now. So it's like, whatever, let's go.
So he's got his own army. They get their very first experience in battle room, and he's picking on his smallest and youngest soldier that's been assigned to him, who, if I'm not mistaken, has just been promoted from a launch group into an army.
Yes. Faster than Ender was. Ender was the fastest launchy, what they call you just launched into the space station and started in. He was the fastest person to get put into an army, and then this character Bean was even faster, as we found out later, but he was also sent in later.
So they're having a bit of an exchange, and I'm going to jump into the middle of it. But the important thing to remember is Bean is not only literally the new kid on the block, he's the youngest kid in the army. He's just been promoted from his launch group into an army. The army has just been stood up. It's all inexperienced people, and Ender, who is the youngest commander that the battle school has.
And he's also abnormally small for his size, for his age.
Hence the name Bean.
Yeah.
Poor kid. Nobody's treating him fair. Ender gently pushed Bean back against the wall. I'll tell you how to get a tune. Prove to me that you know what you're doing as a soldier. Prove to me you know how to use other soldiers, and prove to me that somebody's willing to follow you into battle. Then you'll get a tune, but not bloody well until. Bean smiled. That's fair if you actually work that way. I'll be a tune leader in a month. Ender reached down, grabbed the front of his uniform, and shoved him into the wall. When I say I work a certain way, Bean, then that's the way that I work. Bean just smiled. Ender let go and walked away. When he got to his room, he lay down on his bed and he trembled. What am I doing? My first practice session, and I'm already bullying people the way Bonzo did. And Peter shoving people around, picking on some poor little kid so others will have somebody that I all hate. Sickening. Everything I hated in a commander, and I'm doing it. Is it some law of human nature that you inevitably become whatever your first commander was? I can quit right now if that's so. And that's his first real brush with large unit leadership, with running his own command. And he's immediately picked up every bad habit that everyone else has thrust upon him through his so far very short life. His first army commander bullied him and picked on him, prevented him from participating in the battle game. His older brother picked on him and was abusive. And his first act as commander is to belittle the smallest person that's been assigned to his army. He's immediately ashamed of himself for it.
But the fact is he's ashamed and he knows that he needs to fix it.
Well, and I think that's why I had that passage highlighted here in my notes, was some people in a command position, some people in leadership, some people in management, people like Bonzo Madrid can't get past their own ego for the betterment of their team. To be able to recognize that that's a set of behaviors that you don't want because they don't build your team and they don't promote the success of the mission, already puts them ahead of people like Bonzo that can't see that they're their own biggest problem.
Yeah, I mean, and part of the problem is that in this universe, Jocko doesn't exist, so they haven't read his books and solved that problem. But
he wasn't born yet when it was written. Yeah, no, but the fact is that he recognizes his poor behavior, and that's different from anybody before him. So at least going forward, he knows that there is something that he needs to fix in order to not continue making the same mistakes that his previous leaders have made upon him.
Yeah, but I also think he makes a bit of a breakthrough in realizing that at some point he does have to be cruel in order to get the best performance out of people as well. And he sort of clues in that that's what his teachers are doing to him.
Yeah, cruel might not be the right word.
But hard.
Tough.
Very hard,
tough,
very
yeah.
tough, and very testing of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No hand holding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's not there to be their friend. He's there to be their leader and their teacher.
Throw them into the deep end. Don't give them a hand hold out, and
Yeah.
force them to find their own way out of it, and they'll learn from it and get better due to it.
Yeah. Yeah, but then he also goes and helps people and helps them learn the things and does all the things and encourages them to try things and fail at things so that they learn for themselves and all of that. So I mean, he does a lot of leadership learning sort of on the fly with all of the stuff that he's dealing with.
I can't find the passage I want. It's near the end of the book when they're on Eros. But there's a point where he's talking about after he breaks down one of his subordinate leaders, he pushes her too hard. He has her complete too many missions, and she just she fails.
Has a mental breakdown, basically.
And she loses a bunch of troops. Her starships are destroyed, and she never has the same tenacity after that. And he realized there's another lesson in there that not only does he need to cycle his people out so they get a rest, which he hadn't
Wow.
really learned up until that point, but there's also
I'm near that spot. Let me just find that paragraph.
Well, basically, he's trying to hold people to his own standard and his own,
well, he's trying
I guess,
to hold
endurance, right?
He realizes that he can't do that. So it's not only that he has to sub them out. If he gives his subordinate leaders a break, he has to pick up the slack. It's not just like the work can't be done. So it's on somebody to do it. If his subordinate leaders can't do it, then he has to do it himself. And there's a balance in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I really wish
Yeah.
I had the passage.
I think I've got it here. Ender knew at once that he had pushed her too hard because of her brilliance. He had called on her to play far more often and under much more demanding circumstances than all but a few of the others. But he had no time to worry about Petra or to feel guilty about what he had done to her. Just trying to see if there's another
Yeah,
spot.
there's a follow-up to that a couple of paragraphs later. But the point is that he realizes...
here it is. The fact remains that she had broken, and she was far from being the weakest of his squad leaders. It was a warning. He could not press his commanders more than they could bear. Now, instead of using his leaders whenever he needed their skills, he had to keep in mind how often they had fought. He had to spell them off, which meant sometimes he went into battle with commanders he trusted a little less. As he eased the pressure on them, he increased the pressure on himself.
So another lesson in there. Going back to much earlier in the book, when he's commanding his own army at the battle school. If I can find the spot I want. Nope, I have a page mark with my notes on it, but I can't actually find the paragraph that I want. But the point was that he had learned a lesson with his own army that as a commander, he needed to give his platoon commanders space to do their jobs, and he needed to physically separate himself from his troops. So spending time in his quarters as opposed to where the rest of his army lived. So they live in a common barracks, like Spartan barracks style arrangement, bunk beds and big room. Everybody's in one space, except the army commander who has private quarters, which again, it's not very well explored in the book, but like looking at other armies and other commanders, Bonzo Madrid, for example, when we first meet Bonzo and Ender gets introduced to his first army, Bonzo's laying on a bed in one of the barracks rooms with 40 other kids with a giant animated penis on his computer on top of his lap, flapping back and forth.
I see he has ATAC too.
So if the army commanders have their own private quarters...
I was pretty sure that was Rose.
Was it Rose?
Yeah.
You're right. I have the wrong...
That wasn't
It was
Bonzo.
Rose with the giant circumcised penis.
Yeah. But I mean, that was his somewhat more... I mean, the first commander was very strict.
No,
the second one was too lax.
Yes. Yeah. The first commander was too strict and told him to sit there and do nothing. The second commander...
Yeah, and the way that he had everyone organized and everything was too many rules and regulations, whereas, the second one was just too...
But at the end of the day, the thing is when your commander is with you all the time, then you're never truly relaxed, you're never truly at ease, and so you're truly never de-stressing. So I think he realizes that.
That commander also had psychological issues. He there's a good paragraph about it. Sort of really close to where you were talking about with Dink. Rose had a good army and was constantly winning, but didn't understand why he was winning, and that scared him. And so he slept with the light on inside the army barracks because he was scared to be alone and didn't understand what was going on.
Which again, I think there's lessons to take from that, because if you have good people in the right positions, you don't need one superstar leader to get the job done. If you have a bunch of good people working for you and they know how to do their jobs and they're given the freedom to do their jobs effectively, you don't necessarily need to know why you're winning. It would probably be better if you did, but as long as you have the right people on the bus,
Yeah.
you don't all need to know how to drive the bus.
Why they're there, right? It's why you hired them sometimes, because they know
Well, yeah.
what the F they're doing, right?
You trust the people that you've put in the positions to make the right decisions.
That's why I'm paying you.
Yeah.
That's why I trust you.
Yeah.
I found a good paragraph about why he was tested and when he realized what the teachers were doing him. It was the teachers who had done it, and it wasn't an accident. Ender realized that now. It was a strategy. Graf had deliberately set him up to be separate from the other boys, made it impossible for him to be close to them, and he began now to suspect the reasons behind it. It wasn't to unify the rest of the group. In fact, it was divisive. Graf had isolated Ender to make him struggle, to make him prove not that he was competent, but that he was far better than everyone else. That was the only way he could win respect and friendship. It made him a better soldier than he would ever have been otherwise. It also made him lonely, afraid, angry, untrusting. And maybe those traits too made him a better soldier. And that's when he's talking to Bean about why he's been pushing him so hard and giving him a tough time to try and get his own tune to command.
Carrying on in the same vein, I think I have this chapter, or further in the same chapter that you just read from. Either the teachers had been kind to him after all, or he was a better commander than he thought. His ragged little group of veterans, utterly without honor in their previous armies, were blossoming into capable leaders. So much so that instead of the usual 4 tunes, he had created 5, each with a tune leader and a second. Every veteran had a position. He had the army do drill in 8-man tune maneuvers and 4-man half tunes, so that a single command, his army could be assigned as many as 10 separate maneuvers to carry out at once. No army had ever fragmented itself like that before, but Ender was not planning to do anything that had been done before either. Most armies practiced mass maneuvers, performed strategies. Ender had none. Instead, he trained his tune leaders to use their small units effectively in achieving limited goals. Unsupported, alone, on their own initiative. He staged mock wars after the first week, savage affairs in the practice room that left everybody exhausted. But he knew, with less than a month of training, that his army had the potential of being the best fighting group to ever play the game. How much of this did the teachers plan? Did they know that they were giving him obscure but excellent boys? Did they give him 30 launchies, many of them underage, because they knew the little boys were quick learners, quick thinkers? Or was this what any similar group could become under a commander who knew what he wanted his army to do and knew how to teach them to do it? The question bothered him because it wasn't sure whether he was confounding or fulfilling their expectations.
That's all decentralized command right there.
Yeah. I
That,
feel
and
like Jocko should have written a different children's book.
Yeah. Yeah, if these kids were real and they were actually a real army, I have a feeling they'd be wearing brushstroke and short shorts.
And just to sort of spoil a little bit, if you read Ender's Shadow, it was Bean's assignment to create the best army that he could, given only certain soldiers who didn't have much experience. And because Bean was very good at studying people and understanding them, and seeing people who were often ignored and not able to find their abilities, and he was able to find them themselves, he put the army together and he got them. So he built Ender's perfect army.
Bean is the one that's like 4 other books are basically based off of, is it not?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And also a very interesting character.
Yes, and he's actually smarter than Ender, but it's a little unfair because he was genetically modified.
And he arrived a little too late, right? I mean, he just he wasn't there at the right time.
Yes, yeah.
Should have gotten the GMO train sooner.
Yeah.
He was also an orphan on the street, so it took a while to find him. But here they are.
Yeah, well, the more you talk about the other books,
definitely read Ender Shadow. You will not. You will feel the exact same reading Ender's Game. It makes both books.
Oh, good. So
better.
I'm going to be disappointed with the ending again.
The ending sort of goes off into a different way.
I felt
the ending is a little
went
weird.
off on a different. Yeah, we'll come back to the ending when we get closer to the end. I still have a number of place marks that I want to touch on because I mean, for only being a 300-page book, and it's not little print, like it's 300 like big text. Well, wow, that key's out really good on YouTube. Hey, YouTube. Yeah, it's a 300-page novel, and it's written at like a high school English level. Like this is not a difficult read.
Not hard to read, no. But there's
I
a lot
gotta
of
say one thing though. The weird Ebonic slang that they speak.
Oh, the pidgin English.
Yeah, I found very strange. And like I did it books on tape style, and the guy that was reading it really played up the
he did a great job.
Of the slang.
He did a great job.
Mildly less annoying than Jar Jar Binks.
It sounded exactly like Jar Jar Binks in the audio recording. I was just like, wait a minute.
What the shit am I listening to? Is this Star Wars?
But
that's actually probably the most way I guess listen to the book was audio tape versus reading.
This is one of the few.
I read it a lot, but constantly on repeat for the audiobooks.
This is one of the few ones that I have the hard copy of, so I didn't listen to it. I just read. So I guess I'm blessed in that way.
I find it's really hard for me to make notes and placeholders in audiobooks to go back and reference.
Yeah. But I've listened to it so often I can find the section pretty well.
Yeah, the problem is I'm usually driving and it's like, oh, I want to write that down because like that's a good talking point, and it's just like, well, I'm driving, so it's kind of hard right now.
Yeah, that's when you just just talk at your phone and be like,
well,
hey,
in
Siri,
Audible, you actually
note.
have a button that will place a bookmark at your location, so you can go back to it later.
And if you're using Audible, you should be doing that through our Amazon affiliate link, as Audible is an Amazon-owned company, and that concludes this ad read.
Carrying on.
Carrying on. I have one that's not a Jockoism for a change.
Because I'd really love to hear his analysis of this book. It would be amazing.
You know what? I didn't look, but I know that we've overlapped a couple of books that we've done that Jocko has done, and one of them was definitely after we did it, so maybe Jocko listens to us and not the other way around. I doubt that, but
so yeah, Jocko, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show, bud.
Absolutely. You the man.
Echoes Charles, make it explosions.
Yeah.
More kaboom. Ender's first battle, maybe not first battle. There's a battle against Rabbit Army, which they win. I think it's his first battle against another army, which again, like the rapidly accelerated scale, normally you don't get to be an army commander in battle school until you're in your teens, like you're 12, 13, 14 years old. They've done it to him at like age 8.
8 or something, yeah.
Yeah. They also keep messing with the rules and changing things. So like normally a newly formed army will have months to train, whereas Ender's army got weeks. Normally they were having mock battles on a weekly basis. In Ender's case, they eventually got down to multiple times a day on an accelerating scale. So we'll talk about the defeat of Rabbit Army here. There was another lesson that I saw that was worthwhile. The lights went full, and Major Anderson himself came through the teacher gate at the south end of the battle room. He looked very solemn as he offered Ender the teacher hook that was richly given to the victor in the games. Ender used it to thaw his own army's flash shoots, of course, and he assembled them in tunes before thawing the enemy. Crisp military appearance, that's what he wanted when Carby and the Rabbit Army got their bodies under control again. They may curse us and lie about us, but they'll remember that we destroyed them. And no matter what they say, other soldiers and other commanders will see that in their eyes. In those rabbit eyes, they'll see us in neat formation, victorious and almost undamaged in our first battle. Dragon Army isn't going to be an obscure name for long. Cran Carby came to Ender as soon as he was unfrozen. He was 12 years old, who apparently had made commander only in his last year at school. So he wasn't cocky like the ones who had made it at 11. I'll remember this, thought Ender, when I'm defeated, to keep dignity and have honor when it's due, so that a defeat is not disgrace. And I hope I don't have to do it often. So if you're going to fail with style.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't fail.
No, he doesn't. But I think that the lesson for the reader is an important lesson.
Yes, a very important lesson.
Don't be a baby.
Unlike
don't
other
cry.
cases where other armies did not take their loss well.
Like Bonzo.
Well, Ender formed up his tunes into some sort of a formation and accepted the other army commander's honorable defeat. He didn't throw a tantrum or storm out or break things or kick and scream. He did it in an honorable way. If you're going to fail with style.
Be humble in your defeat.
Yeah.
You might just learn something, you know?
Yeah.
Try and find my next mark on this page. All right. So again, this is like almost immediately after, just carrying on, same page. They're talking about Ender's Dragon Army. They laughed, they cheered, and he dismissed them and sent them jogging on to the barracks. He caught his toon leaders on the way out and told them that he wouldn't expect anyone to come to practice till 7:45, and that practice would be over early so the boys could shower. Half an hour for breakfast and no shower right after battle. It was still stingy, but that would look lenient compared to the 15 minutes. And Ender liked having the announcement of the extra 15 minutes come from the toon leaders. Let the boys learn that leniency comes from the toon leaders and harshness comes from their commander. It'll bind them better in the small, tight-knit knots of this fabric. So he'd originally planned to cut breakfast short and have practice, and he tells his subordinate leaders to tell their tunes that everybody gets to catch a break. Not a big break, mind you, because the teachers have been screwing with them, but 30 minutes of break instead of 15 minutes, and letting the subordinate leaders deliver the good news.
For reference, most armies, they have their first battle, and I think it's a couple weeks before they have their next battle. Ender's army proceeded to have a game every single day for 7 days. In some cases, had 2 battles in the same day, and on one of the cases, fought 2 armies at once. So it literally straight to the grindstone, put straight into the fire, and pushed as hard as they could to try and get them to fail. And, having a leniency there is good.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another one of those good leadership lessons, because really, I think there's a bunch of personal takeaways from the book, but there's also a bunch of leadership takeaways from the book. And I still think that that's the reason why it hits the Marine Corps reading list, is because so the Marine Corps reading list is divided into like target audiences based on time in service and rank. Ender's game is designed for privates and lance corporals. So Marines that have been in the Marine Corps for a year or two, that maybe they have a person or 3 that work for them. Like, they have almost no leadership capital. They're like brand new junior guys. They're like 18, 19 years old. And they're the people that are supposed to be reading this book in the Marine Corps.
Help give them some insight as to why their commanders do what they do, and then also how
the Marine Corps reading list doesn't tell you why it made the reading list.
No. But I mean, you can surmise after reading the book, like, I'm probably supposed to take a few of these lessons from this, and this helps make some of the things that are happening to me, puts them into perspective and why they're happening the way they're happening, why my sergeant is not such a total piece of shit, whereas the lieutenant is always the one dealing out the, the stiff punishment, so to speak.
Well, it's like the ongoing lessons of life, like the higher, the fewer, and then also like the loneliness of a command, right? Like when you're not supposed to be buddy buddy with people that you're in charge of per se.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a professional detachment. I think is that's what I think what the Marine Corps is kind of going after is that professional detachment is almost a necessary evil in order to effectively command anybody.
Mm-hmm.
When the card gets to it in a roundabout way at the end of the book, which we can talk about the command school part, because I'm really close to where my notes are on that section. Command school is its whole own special flavor of craziness in this universe. But the lessons to take away from this that are applicable in a wider sense. This one particularly about why do wars happen. So Ender's talking to Colonel Graff. Graff was the commander at Battle School, like the headmaster or principal type figure at this school. And Graff ends up getting moved on to continue to supervise Ender as he transitions into command school. During their transit from Earth to command school on Eros, they're discussing whatever it is they need to talk about for 3 months to keep them entertained. So apparently it's not a short trip. And Ender was asking why the buggers are buggers. Why do they do what they do? Why did they try to invade Earth twice? Why did they try to kill people? And how did the International Fleet and Mazar Rickham stop them?
Rackham.
Rackham?
Sorry.
What did I say?
Yeah, Rickham.
Oh, yeah, no, that's wrong. Rackham. Thank you.
I always thought of it as Rackham as well.
Yeah. Beer. Just beer.
Yeah.
So, in one of their conversations about the goings on, why are we fighting the buggers? I've heard all kinds of reasons, said Graff. Because they have an overcrowded system, they've got to colonize. Because they can't stand the thought of other intelligent life in the universe. Because they don't think we are intelligent life. Because they have some weird religion. Because they watched our old video broadcast and decided we were hopelessly violent. All kinds of reasons. What do you believe? It doesn't matter what I believe. I want to know anyway. They must talk to each other directly, Ender, mind to mind. What one thinks, another one can also think. What one remembers, another can also remember. Why would they ever develop language? Why would they ever learn to read and write? How would they know what reading or writing were even if they saw them, or signals or numbers or anything we use to communicate? This isn't just a matter of translating from one language to another. They don't have a language at all. We use every means we could think of to communicate with them, but they don't even have the machinery to know we're signaling. And maybe they've been trying to think to us and they can't understand why we don't respond. So the whole war is because we can't talk to each other? If the fellow can't tell you his story, you can never be sure he isn't trying to kill you. What if we left them alone? Ender, we didn't go to them first. They came to us. If they were going to leave us alone, they could have done it 100 years ago before the first invasion. Maybe they didn't know we were intelligent life. Maybe, Ender, believe me, there's a century of discussion on the very subject. Nobody knows the answer. When it comes down to it, though, the real decision is inevitable. If one of us has to be destroyed, let's make damn sure we're the ones alive at the end. Our genes won't let us decide any other way. Nature can't evolve a species that hasn't a will to survive. Individuals may be bred to sacrifice themselves, but the race as a whole can never decide to cease to exist. So if we can't kill every last one of the buggers, and if they can't kill every last one of us, as for me, said Ender, I'm in favor of surviving. So, yeah. I mean, there's sort of the nature of war and also the nature of survival, because there's a few points I think to take from that.
So
I think a lot of. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say also, like, we didn't cast the first stone, right? And that's generally, you know how you can
Well,
live with it at the same time. We didn't cast for a stone, but we were going to make damn sure that you're not going to cast another stone towards us.
I think that's the survival aspect of it, but there's also, I think, this like allegorically to wars throughout history. A lot of wars, most wars, have been started for stupid reasons, and a lot of them were probably the results of misunderstanding. And in this is an extreme case where you don't even have
shoot one archduke and
all hell breaks loose.
Before you know it, you're in trench warfare.
Yeah.
So I think the first part of that is they don't have the right tools to communicate with this other species. But I mean, the allegory is like, if you don't understand the nature of other people, then are you going to end up going to war with those other people? Right?
Probably.
A lot of wars through history, I think, have been through misunderstandings or poor reasons, not
or reasoning.
Yeah, but go back to the other one. I mean, it certainly shows like his will to survive is there, and he's willing to do what he needs to do to survive, because in all the other fights previous, like I said, he doesn't want to fight, but he'll do it reluctantly, and he'll do it, and he's in it to win it, right? Like
no, that's if you're gonna go to war, you should be a winner.
Yeah, you're not gonna hit me. You hit me once, but you're not gonna get a second chance to hit me again, right?
Yeah.
Not the way that Ender plays. I got one more note in the back of the book here. Then we can probably talk about the ending that makes me anxious. My notes are upside down. That's exciting. All right, so they're at command school. Ender has met Mazar Rackham. Their initial encounter is in Ender's dorm room. He wakes up and there's an old dude sitting on his floor, just hanging out.
A little weird. Yeah.
And the door is locked and he can't get out.
Odd.
The old dude just ignores him. Ender finally went to his exercises, but the old man kept watching. Finally, tired and angry at this wasted day, a prisoner in his room, Ender went back to his bed to get his desk. As he leaned over to pick up the desk, he felt a hand jab roughly between his thighs and another hand grab his hair. In a moment, he had been turned upside down, and his face and shoulders were being pressed into the floor by the old man's knee, while his back was excruciatingly bent and his legs were pinioned by the old man's arms. Ender was helpless to use his arms. He couldn't bend his back to gain slack so he could use his legs. In less than 2 seconds, the old man had completely defeated Ender Wiggin. All right, Ender gasped. You win. The man's knee thrust painfully downward. Since when, asked the man, his voice soft and rasping, do you have to tell the enemy when he has won? Ender remained silent. I surprised you once, Ender Wiggin. Why didn't you destroy me immediately afterward? Just because I looked peaceful? You turned your back on me. Stupid. You've learned nothing. You've never had a teacher. Ender was angry now and made no attempt to control or conceal it. I've had too many teachers. How was I supposed to know you'd turn out to be an enemy, Ender Wiggin? Whispered the old man. I am your enemy, the first one you've ever had that was smarter than you. There is no teacher but the enemy. No one but the enemy will tell you what the enemy is going to do. No one but the enemy will ever teach you how to destroy and conquer. Only the enemy shows you where you are weak. Only the enemy tells you where he is strong. And the rules of the game are what you can do to him and what you can stop him from doing to you. I am your enemy from now on. From now on, I am your teacher.
It's true. Nobody's going to fight you harder than your enemy. Is it Sun Tzu?
The Art of War. No, it's very like the Art of War.
Yeah, esque. Yeah, very esque. But yeah, who's gonna fight you harder than your enemies? Your buddies are always gonna have that like little, they're always gonna be at like, that 98%. That 2% you're only gonna ever get from a true enemy. You're only gonna learn that in the heat of battle.
I mean, I think you're taking that very literally, and I think that's. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I take that to be the enemy is also your own weakness or your own inability or your own failings at a task. It doesn't have to be in combat against another person. It could be that you failed at something that you set out to do, and that was the enemy, and there's a lesson to be learned from that, that you can take something from that, you can learn from that, you can be better the next time, you can find a way to improve yourself because of that failure. That doesn't have to necessarily be in combat against another person. That you didn't run your 5K time you wanted, so run faster next time. Train harder so you can run faster next time. You didn't get the date with the pretty girl. Is the pretty girl the enemy? Well, no, probably not. Maybe you're into that, but probably not. So work harder, be more confident, become a more interesting person, or at least get a better car so that the next time you ask her out, maybe she'll be interested.
Or at the very least, like, don't whine about losing.
Yeah, nobody likes a whiner.
But
Losers whine. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen.
The Rock. What a great movie.
One of the best.
So that's all the notes I got for, I think, the best of the passages, or the passages that I had the most succinct lessons, because there are a whole bunch more. Some of them are really long. Some of the parts of the book are, I think, a little dull.
I enjoyed the whole book. Every time I read it, though, I always sort of skip the beginning. I don't know. I just like the science fiction.
The ending. I don't mind the beginning. And
why don't you like it so bad? I thought it was interesting. I mean, I wish it was more flushed out. I wish it took a couple more chapters instead of like being finished in like one chapter.
Well, I mean, one thing we haven't touched on at all in this is like the whole side story of his sister and brother and their whole, I guess,
scheme to take over the world.
Yeah. Like
creepy relationship with Ender. I mean,
yeah, and political writings and stuff like that.
There's the weird incestuous implications with the sister that I'm not comfortable with. So we start with those.
Okay, I missed those. I on all the times I've read it and listened to it, I haven't caught any of them.
It's definitely getting a little weird.
Yeah, things were getting a little kooky here. So
maybe not like totally that way, but like at least 3/4 that way, if not further, right? Like
3/4.
You know, like he probably wouldn't act on it, but he was certainly thinking it, right? Like,
well, he was 6. He was.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I see examples. I totally missed those.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty innocent when I read it the first time. I don't know. I didn't really pick up too many.
I didn't notice it until this time when I read it, and I don't know. I mean, maybe something has changed with me, or maybe I've changed the way I look at the world.
Maybe we just, that's probably what it is, with too much of that nonsense going on in the world.
Epstein happened, and now you're aware of it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously the Ender and Valentine have a deep connection. Sorry, Valentine. Yes, obviously they have a deep connection, and they
leverage that against him to get him to do certain things.
Right, which the IF knows that and uses it to their advantage. It's why they cut them off from their family when they send them to battle school. It's why they leverage.
No, they only cut him off. Everyone else received letters from the family. It was just him who didn't receive any communication from his family.
But then they also allow him a visit because they need something from him that only she can give.
Yeah, they need to bring him back because he's on the way out. They're losing him.
So close to being burned out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then there's the whole other weird, like, political writings and scheming of those two and trying to take over the world, of which eventually his psychotic brother actually does take over the world.
But that's good. It's a step. He's not a sociopath anymore. Now he's just a regular psychopath.
Now he's just
he's just a politician. Yeah.
I missed that part. I don't remember that part. Does he take over the world in the book or in another?
Not
or in another book.
It's in the next book.
Yeah.
Okay. They do mention that he becomes basically the overlord of Earth, or that they have a title for it, but like arbitrator of Earth or something. It's like the last 2 pages or something.
Are we made to believe it's a bad thing though?
Well, most
No,
successful CEOs right now have sociopathic tendencies, so hardly a shocker there. I mean, that he.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean,
That's what
they actually talk about him achieving peace and wanting peace, so maybe he's become a better person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he sort of repents for his sins, so he does sort of,
So maybe Ender showed him the light kind of thing.
Then this is where the sequels to Ender's Game sort of come in with Speaker for the Dead, where they try to paint the life of the person as they actually were, instead of how it's normally done here, where you only like show them the best of the person who died, sort of thing, and try to explain it from a different perspective than what other people see.
Yeah, which is maybe a good segue into the weird ending, because it's the whole Speaker of the Dead thing. It was a little weird.
Why is he allowed to do all of the things that he's allowed to do in the last like 3 pages? Where's Graph?
Should be
Back
refreshing.
on Earth. It wasn't
I guess
going to fly across the universe.
Still maybe getting a court-martial for all of the horrible things that he did.
No, because he ends up by somewhere talking to someone, presumably Anderson, because he has no other friends.
Yeah.
That he doesn't end up getting court-martialed and put in jail or anything, although there was allegations of child abuse and other problems at battle school. But also Ender's still a 12-year-old, so like they're cool with like the guy that literally just saved the universe getting on a almost as fast as light ship and traveling with his.
Well, I guess maybe we should give the spoiler though.
Yeah, you should probably explain the ending before.
Are you going to explain the ending before? Because some people memories are not as good as others.
I guess short story, Ender does like his final test, except it's not actually a test. He's fighting a battle for real, but he has no idea, and he wipes
he's led
out
to believe it's a test.
the enemy completely, or at least as far as he knows.
So, okay, you should probably give a little bit more build up to that, so you don't just like, just push him off the little hill that you built up, the whole time after after he completes all of his battles in battle school, he gets shipped off and his army gets completely destroyed. Everyone gets transferred into their own armies, and he's like, okay, what the hell? What just happened to my army? You're trading off literally everyone I'm in control of. What's going on here? I got no one left. Well, he gets sent over to command school, as Andrew was saying earlier, and all the best and brightest students of battle school were sent over here to learn how to be commanders and to control entire fleets. And they end up basically doing like spaceship simulators and learning how to control large space fleets and attack other spaceships and work around planets and stuff like that. And they start practicing, going through, slowly getting larger and larger, and then the tests arbitrarily switch over into what you find out later is real life. You don't find this until right at the very end, but as soon as they have limited equipment, older vessels, and resources that are quote unquote saved in between every battle, like, oh, if you expended this many resources in this battle, well, it's going to get transferred to the next one. And so you have to learn to hold on to your resources and only use them when you absolutely need them. Eventually that gets switched over into real battles that he doesn't know. So he's controlling real people who are going and fighting the real enemy. And then he finally goes to the home world and uses a device to basically absolutely blow it up and separate all of the atoms. And
Death Stars the planet.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And completely destroyed the species because the buggers are controlled by one queen. It's like it's a hive mind, and so everyone, all the workers and fighters they're all controlled by the single queen, and so he basically destroyed every single queen of the species except for
with
one,
no-
as you find out in the
Yeah.
in the end of the book. And then right as he finished it, everyone just started crying who was watching the battle and, you know, celebrating. And then he realizes that, oh shit, you literally just wiped out an entire species and you didn't even know it. And so he has a mental break entirely about it.
He then
So,
goes off
pathos of
exploring
emotion.
the planet that he's on, which, you know, he finds out was a bugger planet at one point, and he finds some monuments and stuff that they built because they somehow got a psychic link to him, and in some game he played in school, it was this thing, and he finds, I guess, a queen in there, and then he starts talking to the queen inside the little egg, which is a little weird because they don't really explain a whole lot of that.
Like how he's able to do that.
Psychic
well,
stuff.
because the buggers are telepathic,
Yeah, but like it's
they
the
sort of
the reason they're going to war is because nobody could talk to one another, but now all of a sudden we can talk to this guy. But like
'cause
whatever,
he's
like
the chosen one. Come on.
Had enough
then, yeah.
Victorians.
but yeah,
That's a
so
different
then
universe.
I guess the queen is begging him to, I guess, let her go and plant her somewhere so that they can like repopulate their species. And he's like, how do I know that you're not like gonna just come and kill me again? But eventually, I guess he decides that it's okay, and yeah, he takes off in his near light speed shape spaceship with this queen egg and is looking for somewhere to plant it
Plant his seed.
after he just wiped out
All of
every
them.
single one of them, less
Yeah.
one.
And in the later books, it sort of explains, you know, or not explains, but it goes more into detail about that. But
Yeah, little
the
weird.
later books start getting really thick.
Like they could have just ended it after like the planet blows up and he's
Yeah,
told that
everybody's cheering.
everything
yeah,
was
he's
actually
sad.
real and not a test.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he's sad because he's, you know, he has a conscience, but you know, he'll get over it. Finn.
Yeah.
So two things with that. I think that the reason the ending isn't the point where I think that it should have been the ending at the destruction of the bugger home planet, I think is predominantly just set up by Card to do sequels because he knew that he
Yeah.
had a winning novel.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of forced to do the setups for sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that there's the one point with that. Also, I feel like the ending is lazy because to not see through what they were doing with like, well, this is Mazar Rackham. Wait, like
Mazar.
shouldn't you be dead? Like he's like, nah, we did this like almost faster than light thing, and it's fine. Everybody I know is dead, and I hate everyone, and I'm going to be the teacher now.
But because
Let's
I was
just sort of
flying
explain
through
it with
space-
the relativistic speeds.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying it doesn't, and like the sci-fi is fine, and that's fine, but it feels like a lazy premise that okay, the guy that beat the enemy the last time is now here, but for reasons that we're going to not actually discuss, I can't be the guy to beat them a second time for whatever reason.
Just like
Yeah.
ancient.
It's just too old. It's just old.
Too old.
Right, but
and,
that's
and
the
the only
argument.
reason why he won it was because of a fluke, basically.
Yeah.
So
What does that
he's-
make him qualified to be the? And that's why I feel like that's kind of lazy at the end of the novel that they get the hero from the first go round that's supposed to teach the chosen one for the next go round, and that's not really what happened because the first guy just got lucky. So what makes him qualified to teach the next guy?
Because he was the only person to understand why he got lucky. He knew he got lucky. Everyone else thought he had
This is
skill.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he was the first person to realize that that they worked in a hive, that there was a queen controlling everyone, and he found the one ship that was controlling everything and sort of didn't move while everything else was
Moving
flying around it.
And
And then
I understand that. I'm just saying that I feel
Yeah.
like it was kind of
Yeah.
lazy to have done that. And I feel that it was kind of lazy to be like, well, you're playing the simulated game on the 3D hologram computer and you can change your view. And well, now you're going to play the game and it's just going to keep getting harder and harder. And Really? Because that's how this has worked the whole way along. Because the computer game at the beginning, the Giants drink game that he had a bunch of problems with kept getting harder and harder, and the Battle School game kept getting harder and harder. And we're not going to see that there's a trend here with like there's third party interference again with this, and we're not playing a simulation anymore, and this is for realsies, and we're going to go blow somebody's planet up. We're not drawing that parallel.
The other thing I was kind of upset about is at no point does he call in Johnny Rico and the Roughnecks.
I know. I feel like the universes are so closely overlapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously must have drawn some inspirations from it, because I mean, Starship Troopers was out way before this was.
I mean, that may have been like that. Starship Troopers is like the first war. I don't know who said that when we were talking like the other day on Sunday about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was like the first war, the second war, and then
set up for the third war.
So yeah, that's really my only criticism is I don't like the ending. It feels kind of contrived, and then
It
they
felt
add
rushed to
on
me.
but especially after they destroy the bugger home planet.
Mm-hmm.
Was like,
Well, because he spent the whole novel talking about how the loneliness of command, right, and how alone he was, and then all of a sudden, he's just Mr. Popular. He's surrounded by people everywhere, and
Yeah, he's got like the best.
yeah, and they're letting a 12-year-old just explore the universe with a thing that may possibly end it,
and becoming governor of a planet, and so on and so on.
They didn't know that he had the
I was going to say
bugger egg.
Yeah,
They
but
know
like
he
that's
had the
like
egg.
again,
Luke
he's
Skywalker
12.
and the
This is-
lightsaber. Most dangerous
on the
weapon on the
teachers.
planet immediately points at his own face, right? Like, come on.
I put this on the teachers. This is all.
I just
Yeah.
I thought I would have been nice if they drew the battle out a bit more about you would think that at the home planet there would be a bigger armada that they'd have to go up against, kind of to
Well, yeah, they could have
Make-
cut
make
out
it
some of
fit.
the.
It was
suffer some more law.
Well,
They
could have
lost
cut
like
out the
all
whole
of their ships.
the whole plotting and scheming of the brother and sister to take over the world, and maybe put in a little bit more build up in the end. Because
Again,
like
feel
for the
the
sequels, that
scheming
maybe
is for the
makes
sequels.
But yeah, like that's the thing. Like maybe it's for the sequels, but like it doesn't really add anything to the book itself. I mean, the relationship, bizarre as it is between him and his sister, does.
Right, but they
Yeah,
would have had that without having to do any other exposition about the brothers' political aspirations.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, all in all, I think it was a good book, and I would recommend it to people to read.
Oh yeah,
it.
strongly. This is a great book that, as an adolescent, because that's the market that it's really aimed at, is like your young adult reader kind of science fiction.
Mm.
It is an easy read. It's not.
I read it back in
complex.
elementary school. I didn't have any issues with it. So
yeah, no,
It
it's
was required
not.
reading in
and I'm
ninth
still
grade.
pretty stupid, and I read it fine. So
Well, that's and I like that there's a lack of literary devices. There's not a lot of metaphors, and there's not a lot of like
I
hidden
don't have to look
meanings.
this. I don't have to look this word up.
Yeah, well, big words are racist, guys, so it's a good thing we don't use them on this show.
Yeah, so I was reading to your kids, and yet here we are.
Yeah. We're reading to each other, so it's okay.
I mean, I read to my kid, but that's anyway. In any event, anybody else got anything that we didn't beat to death that they want to?
No, I mean, I really enjoyed the part about just going over tactics in the book. It just, I don't know, kind of felt like reading an RTS book.
it definitely the book definitely shaped, or at least pushed me towards the path I'm on right now, and leading me into things. Like, it has by far been my favorite book. As I said before, I've read it
And least favorite movie.
tons and tons and tons of times, and listened to it like almost on repeat at work a whole bunch of times. And yeah, the movie was awful. I was so hyped for it because in the audiobooks they would give a little behind the scenes with the author and stuff like that, and he says, "Oh yeah, we're looking at doing a movie deal," and so I was listening to it for like 5 years, 10 years or something like that, and it might be coming out the movie soon. It's like, okay, let's go. And the movie comes out. It's like, fucking
the
awful.
interview with the author was pretty interesting, and like his whole I came up with the name and I submitted the manuscript or whatever, and they're like, yeah, we don't really like the whole Ender thing. He's like, yeah, I'm not changing that because I kind of just want to have it be Endgame.
Yeah, let's make him
It's like-
16 and let's make him fall in love with his sister or like Petra or some other characters. No, they're 6. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
But he's just like, I just kept it because I wanted it to basically be Endgame. I was like, and I wasn't budging from it. I was like, I can appreciate that.
So
Do Petra and Dink end up together in future novels? Because they seem like they have something
yes,
going on.
sort of, as far as I can remember.
Yeah. I remember something as well. I don't know if it's
not
like full fledged.
It's not a big thing, but there's something. I don't know.
Okay, I mean, like they're also like 12, so I'm not like gonna super sweat it, but it seems
they
like
held,
there's
they held
something going on
hands.
there.
Yeah.
So what
hands.
happens after this book and in the sequels is that after they destroy the buggers, all the countries or the world superpowers end up going to war because they're like, well, shit, what do we do now? Like, we're all been getting together to try and stop this other forces
Okay.
trying to kill us, and now they're not there anymore. So it's like, well, I want to control Earth. So they all started just fighting together.
So it
So
goes
every
from
country
Starship
was-
Troopers to Ender's Game to 1984. Okay, got it.
So they're all fighting to take over and control the children all from the battle school because they all realize that all these kids are geniuses. And so all the countries start going to war, and you get from different perspectives on what's happening in each war, and they end up sort of like all grouping together to try and like get peace again on Earth. So they're not trying to kill each other and stuff. And Peter plays a big role in that, and that's sort of how he takes control of the world. Because that happens while Ender is planet hopping. So that's why at the very end of the book, it's sort of, or does he talk to Peter? Or that might be in the next book. I can't remember. I've listened to them so many times they all start to meld together.
I think Peter just sends him a note, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Okay. So the next book goes more detail about that, but that's why Peter sends him a note, is because he's finally gotten control of the whole planet and sort of given peace on Earth, I suppose. In quotes. But
Define peace.
All right, we've thoroughly blown that planet up.
Yeah.
yeah.
Outstanding. Next month, March book, March Manifesto, Manifesto Madness. Professor Theodore Kaczynski's Industrial Society and Its Future.
Crazy Uncle Ted for the win.
It'll be a short read.
It's
a
an
good
interesting one.
though.
Yeah.
Is this on the can you get this one on the Audible app?
I have no idea, but if it's not narrated by Uncle Ted, I don't want it.
There is an audio book for it. I wish it was narrated by him. That would be amazing.
Well, it's not like he's got nothing or something to do. He could just sit there and record an audio, you would think, but
Yeah, but I guess there's something that you're not allowed to profit from your story when you're in prison.
yeah.
I mean, he wrote this before he was in prison. Anyway, tune in for March Madness when we read the Unabomber's Manifesto.
Because if we're not on a watch list already, we will be now.
Oh, yeah, we gonna be.
You're saying I shouldn't
Also,
be
if
searching
you-
for this on the internet right now.
Well,
Good-
maybe
good
not
to
on
know.
your computer. Use the wife's computer.
Go to the library.
Put a VPN on, like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And when the wellness check comes, just point at her.
Yeah.
If you are buying things on Amazon or Audible, use our affiliate links or go to bigluau.biz and make sure to use our affiliate code so that we get some money for that. Helps out, and I appreciate it.
Please, it
Posting
makes
is not
all
free.
that hard work of mine worth it. I spent so much time building that website.
Yeah.
I know. I know. It is nice to always see that I'm the first visitor, though. If you haven't been to bigluau.biz, you have to. Yeah, you go down and scroll
You're
down.
always
to the hit
number
counter.
one.
It's like once upon a time on the internet, you had hit counters on a website that would tell you how many times the page had been loaded. This page says that you're the first visitor, like every time. It's very funny.
That's because you're number one.
Yeah, you're always my number one visitor.
We're also on Discord now because we're not allowed to use other social media. So until we get kicked off of Discord, there's a link for to join the Discord in the bottom of the show notes in every episode for the last couple episodes since we started the Discord. We'll see how long that sticks around for. We'll go around the room. Andrew, where can everybody find you if they want to?
Betterandrew.biz if you want even more Big Luau awesomeness and a website, or andr.ca if you want my actual contact info that I haven't purged.
I'm so terrified to click on what betterandrew.biz looks like today, but we'll do that later. Dave, where can everybody find you?
Find me on the grams at diesel6223 while you still can. Hopefully you'll have some more content coming soon. Should be a good summer. Dates are starting to populate.
Nice. Gotta like that. Benny, where can everybody find you?
BennyLewis.ca. And we have we're on Instagram and Facebook now. And trying to get content out there. So
right on. Gavin, where can everybody find you?
The best place to find me is on the Instagrams, UrbexGTA, all one word, or possibly at more Ragnarok classes that we might have coming up, but we don't have dates for yet.
Yeah, we'll work on that. Ian, where can everybody find you?
All right, you can reach me by email at thewesternretreat@gmail.com. You can also find myself and various other members of this panel on Canadian Prepper Podcast, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern on iTunes and YouTube, and YouTube and Facebook, and we also go on iTunes for the podcast as well. Brand new thing, because Facebook hates us. We decided to start our own little thing on Gab, which is Self-Reliance and Homesteading Canada. Just hop on there.
So you didn't include the dirty P word, huh?
Exactly. No P word on that one. Hopefully we won't get banned that way.
Yeah. But yeah, if you don't already listen, you should go check it out. Andrew and I were guest appearing yesterday on their show, spurging out about pants.
So I understand, because we're may as well plug the Prepper Podcast. You've run out of prepping topics, and you're also doing a book club now.
Yeah, we are. We just we're actually not really out of topics per se. We just imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, they say. So
appreciate that.
We hear it happens to you frequently.
Exactly. So we decided to do some prepper related books, and of course this next one next week actually is 77 Days in September, which is basically an EMP based book where the guy has to walk home from Texas all the way back up to Montana, and the various hilarity that ensues during the course of that adventure.
I finished it this morning, so finishing one book about a bomb and going into the Unabomber's book.
There you go.
We value your feedback. Send it to feedback@canadianpatriotpodcast.com, or I guess message me on Discord, because that's a thing. Let us know what you think. If there's topics you want to see in the show, or if there's books that we should add to the list, or if you're going to stop listening to us because we're talking about the Unabomber's Manifesto. I expect we're actually going to lose listeners over that one, because it will be a controversial topic.
I think we're controversial to begin with.
I know, but I'm still salty about the time that I said that the Americans shouldn't arbitrarily blow up Middle Easterners and people rage quit.
Yeah.
That makes a little sense, but people should sort of expect that we'd be reading.
If you've been listening to the show for the past 280 episodes, where have you been? That's what we do. Get over it.
Yeah.
I suppose we can talk about 58 genders instead if you want. I mean, but
yeah.
Who's got the time though?
Exactly.
Yeah. This is super off topic, and we're at the bottom of the show anyway, and we're over on time, but did you guys see there was a European politician many months ago? This was probably pre-lockdown, and he greeted every gender in.
Yes.
I want to say it was in the German.
Yeah.
German UN, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's just German parliament or
Like
whatever,
the
and
German
like
federal government.
they
and he
tried to
did
cut him off, and
everything.
he's like, "I'm not done yet."
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
I'm only halfway through.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like a 7-minute YouTube video. So
Yeah. It was amazing.
who's got the time?
Yeah. Certainly not
I
us.
also have to apologize to Rod Giltaka. We couldn't fit Rod into the show tonight. Obviously, it's a very full panel, and Rod said he doesn't read children's books.
Yeah.
For all of our listeners out there in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that the enemy's gate is down.